I want to share three messages. The first, to thank literally thousands of people by just naming a few, and some of you've already heard. But the task force started because of two people, Houghton Mahler, the director of WHO, and Jim Grant, the head of UNICEF. They were interested in improving global childhood immunization, but they didn't get along well with each other. And so they helped to form the task force, asking if we would be a bridge, not to coordinate, but to facilitate. They said the word coordinate could never be used. Well, this program went well and is now seated in Gavi. But there's a report this week that shows that about 154 million children have not died because of that global immunization program. So that's no longer part of the task force, but we are here this evening because of one person, and that's Dr. Roy Vagelos. You've already heard that as CEO of Merck, he started the Mectizan program, he supported the Mectizan program, but years before that, when he was head of research at Merck, he approved funds for Mohammed Aziz to go to Africa and to see what ivermectin might do with onchocerciasis. And then he developed such a team, including Bill Campbell, who got the Nobel Prize for his work on this drug, and Ken Brown and Charlie Fedek. And probably one of the most important people of all was Brenda Colatrella, who, when she retired from Merck, was described as being the backbone of the Mectizan program. So I thank his team. But I think Jim Laney, who was president of Emory at the time, and he gave absolute administrative support to the task force. And I thank CDC. They paid my salary while I was working at the task force, and they've continued to support it ever since. And I thank again, even though people have already thanked them, I thank again the CEOs of Mark Rosenberg, David Ross, and Patrick O'Carroll, because I repeat what you heard before, they have made this place something I never could have envisioned. They've made it so much better. They're so fortunate that I left because of... And I thank the hundreds of people who have worked here in Atlanta and around the world to make this vision come true. Second thing I would like to do is ask the question, where does the task force fit in to global health history? Well, there's a book coming out shortly called Change is Possible, Reflections on the History of Global Health. And it was helped by 5 graduate students from Emory University. It was helped by Ann Mather, who is here today someplace. And Ann has been through every word and every page of that book several times, so it's now all her fault. And Johns Hopkins will be publishing it, and Robin Coleman, who has taken this through the process at Johns Hopkins, was supposed to be here, and because his flight was canceled, he is not with us. But this book looks at the components of global health, the church work in medical missions, what happened with colonial medicine, what happened with military medicine, the development of the multilateral groups such as UNICEF and WHO after the Second World War, the development of bilateral groups such as USAID, Canadian CETA, Swedish CETA, the development of non-governmental organizations such as CARE, and the development of academic programs that just sprung up so fast around the country on global health. And then the chapter on when corporations became involved. This changed everything, and we can thank Merck and Roy for that. And the power of what happened when a politician becomes interested in global health, and President Carter is the example of that. But then 40 years ago, the task force came, and they used a somewhat different approach, which I call a hybrid organization. It did not answer to WHO or UNICEF or any global institution. It answered to a Mectizan expert committee. And now we have dozens of those hybrid organizations, and I see that as the future of public health, that asks, how do we attack a problem, and then develops the structure afterwards. With public, private, everyone involved in doing this. And the glue is not that you belong to an organization. The glue that holds us together is everyone shares an outcome that's been defined. So, third and finally, some advice for the future. Continue to combine science and do the best you can on science. Huxley said, science is simply common sense at its best. And you'll make mistakes, correct those mistakes. Don't try to hide them. And then, in addition to the science, add art so that you have creative common sense at its best. And finally, add a moral compass so that you have moral, creative common sense at its best. And then remember some of the advice we hear from people of different ages. And the people who are with the task force for a long time or from CDC have heard me talk about these people for so long, so you don't have to listen. But this is for the young ears. Rabelais, in 10 words, provided a guideline. And those 10 words were, science without conscience is but the ruin of the soul. And I think those 10 words should be on every science program in the country. And I sometimes quote Adlai Stevenson, who described public health. And he said, you've served society well, and sometimes better than society deserved. And then you continue to have the power of optimism. Harlan Cleveland, in his late years, became very interested in global health. And he concluded that global health workers are fueled by unwarranted optimism. And I love that statement, unwarranted optimism. Do not hire pessimists. Einstein said, intellectuals solve problems, but geniuses prevent them. So continue to prevent problems towards global health equity. But your great challenge and joy and passion will be in rewriting history before it happens. Civilization is organized kindness, and global health is one of the ways to organize that kindness. I was on the board of this small college that Paul and I attended in Tacoma, Washington, and at each meeting, the secretary of the faculty would report on the developments of the faculty and what they've accomplished. And one day he said, this will be my last meeting. I've served my 3-year term. I'm being replaced. He said, I took this job out of a sense of duty. And then I found, as I talked to other faculty in different forums, that I was so amazed at what was happening at the institution that I began to like it. And then he said, I ended up loving this job. He said, last night I asked my wife, would you in your wildest dreams have thought I would like this? And she said, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you've never figured in my wildest dreams. And you are all contributing to my wildest dreams, and I thank you.